What it do? Welcome to another new episode of Locked On Bucks. On today's show, the Milwaukee Bucks followed up arguably their most impressive win of the season over the Wolves with another really good win today over the Philadelphia 76ers, beating them 119 to 98. We're going to break down the major takeaways from this Bucks dub and take a look at how the Bucks defensive play and their on-court efforts have Bobby Portis remarking that the Bucks are starting to look like the Bucks again. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, and you can catch me weekly on the Technical File Podcast, the Pack a Day Podcast, as well as Cheesehead TV's Carry the G and MKE during the NFL season. Joining me is Frank Madden, longtime voice of the pod and founder of BrewHoop.com. We appreciate you for tuning in, and we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast at, as well as on YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, Frank, like I mentioned, the Bucks coming back out this All-Star break looking pretty good. They had a really impressive win over the Wolves, followed that up today with a really solid win against the Joel Embiid-less 76ers. And Bobby Portis was mic'd up during the game today, and you heard him remark, the Bucks are starting to look like the Bucks again. Even saw the Bucks social media team post that after the game. And to me, when I hear the Bucks are starting to look like the Bucks again, what that screams out to me is great defensive effort and energy on the court.
Yeah, and shot making, right? The offense has been hit or miss for a bit. And before I get too far, and Camille, I know you're aware of this, but for those listening and those watching, I have a live studio audience with me here. Tilly, you want to say hello? So my wife is out for the afternoon, and our nap window just got blown open by a baby that did not have any interest in napping. But yeah, it's good vibes. It's a family weekend here, but it's good vibes in my house, good vibes with the Milwaukee Bucks, and yeah, I mean, I think the defense is the thing. Obviously, we've been talking about it here these past few weeks. I checked again, sort of after the stats went live. After this game, since Adrian Griffin's departure, they're 7th in defensive rating. Whether you include the Joe Prunty time or not, whatever, I'll include it. I'll just say the post-Griff Bucks, defensively, the numbers are really good. And opponent three-point shooting is about average, which they were near the top in terms of that opponent three-point shooting luck for most of the season. So that has, they haven't just been getting lucky with teams missing a bunch of shots. We saw the Sixers miss a bunch of shots, especially in the first half today, but they kind of came back around, and, it wasn't like a complete outlier shooting performance from them. Well, the Bucks shot very well. And so I think, you just look at this weekend, it was obviously really important that they start playing better basketball. I think they had played some good basketball, during the Doc Rivers tenure, but to go in to the break with those two wins or losses against the Heat and the Grizz, obviously that put a lot of pressure to come out and just look a lot better, and couldn't take anything for granted against the Wolves on Friday. That's the number one team in the West right now. But the defense, especially in that third quarter, was great. And, Brook Lopez, I thought his, the work he did protecting the rim, barricading the rim these last two games, I think has been pretty awesome, really impressive. And Brook also on Friday night, his three-point shooting early kind of kept them in it when, the Bucks didn't look so hot offensively in the first quarter. So, a couple of road wins to start the post All-Star break period. Giannis looking like Giannis, and Dame slow start on Friday, but today looked really good, started off really well, and obviously hit a couple of huge shots in the fourth quarter against the Timberwolves. So again, has Dame turned the corner? Is it all going to be, fine, and we're going to get vintage Dame now from here on out? We'll see. But to me, that, the defense and also Dame just looking a bit more like Dame, those were kind of the two biggest takeaways for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And definitely want to talk more about Dame. But the Bucks defense, we have been mentioning, like you said, since the coaching change that, hey, the Bucks defense is playing better. It's playing better. We were saying that when sometimes the scoreboard wasn't reflecting in wins to say that this process has been getting better. But just looking at the Bucks coming out of the break, right? This game here against the 76ers is now the third time in the last 6 games where the Bucks have held their opponent to under 100 points. That had only happened once prior to the coaching change. And I was nervous there for a second in this game. When I heard that stat said over the broadcast, I was like, okay, well, here comes the bench. They're starting to knock down some threes here, but the Bucks defense was still able to hold that together. Like, think about the fourth quarter today with the Bucks and the Sixers. The 76ers only scored 5 points over the first 8.5 or so minutes of the fourth quarter. And then once the teams cleared their benches, like I said, the Sixers scored a quick 11 points, yet and still didn't crack that 100-point mark. But I mean, the defensive effort has just been outstanding. We saw against the Timberwolves, the Bucks had a third quarter where they held the Timberwolves to only 13 points in the entire quarter. The Sixers, this quarter I just mentioned, was only 16 points in the fourth quarter, and 11 of that came from their bench. So you love to see that defensive effort from the Bucks, and that's a big part of it because I know for myself, I won't speak for you, Frank, but I definitely had questions if the team as constructed had the personnel to play a top 10 type of defense. And we've been seeing here with Doc coming in that they're able to do it. And I was just seeing them do it consistently. And I also saw the ESPN article that came out talking about some changes made to Doc's defense and what he's doing with the team. And they made mention of the fact that the Bucks are switching almost 10% more now than they were doing before. And when I was talking with Justin, he had just got the second spectrum stats, and he's like, I'm shocked to see that the Bucks switching numbers are actually this much higher, because I didn't think initially while I'm seeing it, like watching it live, that it was that much more, because they were already switching a lot previous to that. And that was something I thought they could continue to do, given the fact that they weren't as strong at the point of attack. Switching makes it a little bit easier, but you have to have the proper communication to make that flow smoothly. And we've been seeing the communication pick up from the Bucks as well over the last few weeks with them.
Yeah, and I think, they've switched 1 through 4 a fair bit throughout the season. Obviously, the start of the year, we talked a lot about Brooke Lopez also doing switching. But,
Mhm.
for the most part, after that kind of like first few games under Adrian Griffin, Brooke was really the only guy that was like pretty much never switching, right? Everybody else that was playing regularly would end up switching a fair bit. And, we still saw it, like we've been seeing it with Doc too. I mean, Bobby Portis switched a fair bit under Griff. We've seen the Bucks trap a fair bit at times, especially in like the Mavericks game. Basically when they've been going against like star caliber players, we've seen them kind of break out more trapping, which again is like kind of like counterintuitive. Like that's not what we typically associate like Doc Rivers defenses with. Like that was supposed to be like the Adrian Griffin blueprint, was using pressure and ball pressure, double teaming, doing kind of weird stuff to try to throw the other team off to force turnovers. And they kind of I think over the course of kind of Griff's time, they did that less and less because it wasn't really working. But interestingly enough, they've actually gotten into forcing turnovers again with Doc, even though they're not. I mean, they're not being like crazy aggressive, but we saw in the Minnesota game. I mean, that run in the third quarter was really keyed off of forcing turnovers, and they had a huge advantage in terms of transition scoring in that game. And both teams were pretty terrible in the half court. Let's give the defenses credit, I'd say, on both sides for the half court defense on Friday night. But the Bucks were actually really good in transition on Friday night. That was kind of the difference. They had that one awesome run late in the third quarter where they started hitting threes and getting out on the break. And then today, again, really the difference was, again, in this time it wasn't the half court, and the Bucks actually did score in the half court, and they held the Sixers to another, like 82 points per play type number in the half court. So, again, like I was just looking at the game log from Cleaning the Glass. Of their top 7 half court defensive performances this year, 4 of them have come in the last 6 games. So it's, I mean, like you're going to have games obviously where the other team just can't make a 3-point shot or whatever it might be, but to do it 4 times at 4 of your top 7 performances to come in the last basically 2 weeks, Like, that's pretty crazy. And by the way, for those not watching on video right now, my daughter, my kindergartner, keeps holding stuff up behind me, and I think I'm doing a tremendous job of staying focused.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
she's got a big smile on her face. She's got like a, what is that? Birthday card? Oh no, baby's first birthday. Okay, yeah, baby's first Valentine's Day card. So, Camille, great NBA players. They have to be able to tune out, fans trying to razz them, distract them, whatever it might be. When you're a podcaster, sometimes you got to tune out, pets, and in this case, little kids that are trying to distract you. And my daughter's kind of getting on camera a fair bit behind me. So I've got a 6-year-old and a 9-month-old causing problems over here. But like I said, when the Bucks go 2-0 to start the All-Star break, whatever, the vibes are good.
The vibes are really good, and you love to see that the vibes are also looking really good with Dame coming out of the All-Star break. We've talked about how important he was going to be for this Milwaukee Bucks team, especially offensively. There's been so much conversation about how he needs to be driving the offense, how he needs to be more comfortable. And since coming out of the break, we've been seeing a lot of signs showing that it seems like that comfort level is getting there, not just for Dame, but for everyone else around him as well. So we'll dig a little bit deeper into how this Bucks offense is starting to click after the break. No matter what kind of work you do, how you communicate is always going to be key. All of the emails, reports, presentations, they're all equally important to the collaboration that's needed to get things done. And Grammarly can help. Grammarly is your AI writing partner that can help you communicate more effectively and efficiently so you can make a bigger impact at work. Grammarly makes me more confident in my personal writing. It's really nice just to be able to have something to check to make sure that I'm on the right path. Because sometimes I'm like, is this the right usage of this word? So having Grammarly to check that is always super helpful. Better writing means a stronger impact. 96% of Grammarly users report that Grammarly helps them craft more impactful writing. Grammarly works across 500,000 apps and websites. By understanding your writing and your context, Grammarly provides relevant and personalized suggestions. Plus, they have a tone suggestion piece that can help you navigate even the most difficult word conversations. Make a bigger impact at work with Grammarly. Sign up and download for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's grammarly.com, grammarly.com/podcast. Easier said than done. We appreciate you for tuning in to Locked On Bucks. Special shout out to all the everydayers who make sure they listen Monday through Friday. And if you enjoy Locked On Bucks, then I really do think you'll enjoy Locked On Sports today, because the Locked On Network launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you with 24/7 coverage of the top sports stories of the day. And it's brought to you by the local experts of Locked On. Plus, you get to see our national shows covering every league. Make sure you find Locked On Sports Today, which is now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Now, Frank, as we mentioned, the Bucks offense is starting to click. It's starting to look a little bit better here. It's, again, small sample size, 2 games. But one thing that was really interesting about what Bobby Portis said throughout the game, of course, I pulled the clip that has been making its way around about the Bucks looking like the Bucks again. But he also said during his halftime interview that the team is finally starting to get used to adjustments. And he mentioned the fact that when you bring in a top 75 player, everyone has to figure out how you play around that. It's a big change to the system. You add in that change with the fact that they've had the coaching change on top of that, and the Bucks have just been trying to figure out their way. We've heard the early returns when Doc came in, just mentioning the fact that, hey, we like the process. It's coming together. We feel good about it. It's coming together. Now at the break, we've seen 2 really impressive wins, and Dame's been at the center, I think, at both of them. Against the Timberwolves, he didn't shoot necessarily super well from the field, but fourth quarter was Dame time, and the ball was in his hands. He made the right decisions. He hit clutch shots down the stretch. And then today against the 76ers, you see him coming out and setting the tone. He scored the first 7 points for the Bucks against the 76ers, had 11 in the first quarter, just really patient play, great effort, not only offensively, but defensively. Third quarter, he seemed facilitating really well. And then come fourth quarter again, if the ball needs to be in his hands and the shot needs to be made, he's here for it. He's ready for it. And it just seems like the Bucks are starting to get that chemistry together on the offensive side of the ball as well.
Yeah, I think, we've talked about it a fair bit, right? You think about like Chris and his chemistry with Giannis, the willingness to throw the ball up to Giannis from any angle, the just unspoken language they have between one another. I thought one thing I love to see about this game, there was that first quarter pick and roll where Giannis slipped a screen, went to the rim, and unfortunately just kind of misconnected with Dame. But a couple other times during this game, Dame was kind of driving, probing. It wasn't like I don't think either was like a particular like structured like pick and roll type action. But he saw Giannis again kind of lurking behind the defense right around the rim and just threw it up. And one of them, Giannis caught it, had to go back down, went right back up for a dunk. The other one, Giannis goes up, dunks it, gets the N1. So I think just stuff like that. I think when we talk about the chemistry between Dame and Giannis, Chris and Giannis have just sort of this. Again, like I don't think anybody's gonna recreate what Chris and Giannis have. But Dame, I think hopefully getting a little more confident on an understanding of where Giannis is going to be. We saw him find Giannis for an awesome, I think it was a left-handed bounce pass that he threw Giannis in a pick and roll where he, then kind of went full head of steam to the basket and finished. And in that Minnesota game we saw, I think there was a number of fouls that Giannis drew late in that game. And I think he hit like 8 of his last 9 free throws. But the one that kind of stood out to me was one where they were trying to pressure Dame right near half court, and Dame used a pass to basically split the screen, and Giannis, full head of steam, goes to the basket. They had to foul him and send him to the line. And fortunately, Giannis was making free throws on Friday night in the fourth quarter. And then today, 9 out of 12, can't complain about that percentage either. So, again, it's just kind of, we know we're 2/3 of the way through the season already, but just getting more reps, just it kind of is kind of one of those things that just is going to help more and more. And I think we saw it today, especially in the second half. I mean, Dame had a quiet second half, but it's basically because the Sixers basically just face guarded him for the entirety of that second half almost, and so forced them to give up the ball a bit more. But again, Giannis scores 11 in the first half. They needed more from him in the second half. So he goes out and scores 9. He was playmaking all night as well. Should have had that triple double if Bobby doesn't have that one. So yeah, probably ends up with a triple double if Bobby can. Did you drop me for a second there?
For a little bit, but
Giannis probably ends up with the triple double if not for Bobby letting that one slip out of his hand.
Yeah, that bounce pass that he had to Bobby.
So yeah, I think it's just that's the way this team's going to be.
Yeah, it probably will.
Yeah.
And
I thought it might have gone between somebody's legs at first, but yeah.
I don't know how Giannis got that through to Bobby. Like when I saw the pass get through, I just said, woo. And then I saw Bobby kind of just toss it up in the air. And I was like, oh, like that's going to be one of those could have been assists. I'm sure Giannis's could have been assist mixtape would be just straight fire with some of the dots that he'd be dishing out to teammates that sometimes just don't convert some of these hotter passes. But I love that you mentioned the fact that you saw Dame getting face guarded a lot in the second half of this game, because during the first half of this game, the way the 76ers were playing Giannis, double teams almost immediately every time he caught the ball. They were making sure that Giannis was not going to do their damage, especially because they're without Joel Embiid. They didn't have that many bigs to be able to match up with the Bucks that way. I mean, as soon as Mo Bamba came in the game later on, it's like Giannis said, food, and just continued to eat whenever Mo Bamba was in front of him. So I love seeing that dynamic between the two of them as well, where it's like, hey, first half, I'm being guarded this way. You have a little bit more space, get to it. Second half comes, and it's almost switched where now it's Dame getting that attention. Giannis is able to take care of business and cook himself there. Love to see that. And as well, I mean, Bobby had a really good game. Pat Connaughton had a really good game. I did see Pat Bev tweet almost 10 minutes after the game that, the belt to As tour continues, which did catch some flack from some 76ers fans pointing out the fact that, hey, buddy, you only had 3 points tonight. Like you should calm that down. But like you said, the vibes are good. And I want to talk more about how those good vibes have been coming from the bench unit as well, because, hey, with due reason, the Bucks bench has gotten a lot of conversation had about them, been pointing out bad play, uneven play. And we've seen Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton really starting to pick it up. So I want to talk a little bit more about their play as well as the rest of the bench after this. You know that instant confidence boost that you get from an outfit when it makes you look really good? I mean, really, really good when you're like, hey, look good, feel good, do good, be good, all that type of stuff. That's the energy I get with Stitch Fix because you can easily upgrade your wardrobe this year because they have a professional stylist that'll help you find new and on trend favorites that'll work for you. I'm getting older, y'all. I don't even really know what's on trend anymore. So Stitch Fix is something that can make it really easy for me. Like my niece told me, "Hey, skinny jeans are out." I said, "Since when?" But thanks to Stitch Fix, like I don't have to even go shop. I don't like to shop. They save me all of that time and effort. Plus, I get outfits that make me look good and feel really good and don't get me talked about by my nieces. I just give my stylist my size, my style, and my budget preferences, order boxes when I want and how I want to. There is no required subscription, which I love. Plus, after that, they send 5 just for me pieces plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. So I can keep what works and send back the rest. Style is what makes you feel as good as you look. So get started today at stitchfix.com/locked on. That's stitchfix.com/locked on. So make sure you guys head on over there, use that code locked on, and start looking good and feeling good. Got to give some love to the Bucks bench. Now, the Bucks rotation has been all the vets, which we figured would be the case with Doc Rivers coming into town. We heard Doc Rivers mention how he wanted to try to get Pat Connaughton's confidence back up. And Pat Connaughton has been playing like a guy with some confidence. I thought tonight, I should say today, afternoon game, was a really good Pat Connaughton game. Although if you look at the box score and you're like, okay, a good Pat Connaughton game, 3 or 4, he only had 7 points. But the 5 rebounds, just moving the ball around. He only had 1 assist, but if he didn't have the shot, it's not like the ball was sticking. He was moving the ball around. Great defensive effort. Even Bobby Portis in the shot selection. I've been somebody who's like, hey, not as many post-ups, please, especially the ones that come after a heat check when he's looking off Dame and looking off Giannis, and you're like, hey, they're open too. But all in the flow of the offense, Bobby wasn't turning down a lot of open threes and looking to get a floater or dribble into the mid-range for another shot. Like, I think the bench play starts with those two, and it will continue to do so for the rest of the season as well.
Yeah, I mean, they basically have an 8.5 man, 9 man rotation right now, and those are the first 2 guys. Pat Bev kind of is the other guy, and then I mean, we've seen Gallo now like in his first 2 games. Not really sure that Gallo is going to be the guy. I think you get healthy, knock on wood. You have Chris Middleton back, and once his team is at full health, hopefully for the playoffs. Obviously, Chris resumes his position as the starting small forward, and Jay becomes part of that bench rotation. So I think that makes Gallo surplus to requirements at that point. But yeah, I mean, Bobby, I think just came out just hitting shots in that first half. And then I thought also, he in the second quarter, I think when Philly made a little bit of a run, especially after Dame went on the bench, Bobby was the one that basically was like, don't worry, I'm just going to go and hit some more jump shots and, fill it up. I think he had like 15 points. I think only Dame had more in the first half than Bobby. So, he was pretty solid on Friday too. And this is the thing with Bobby. I mean, he's been a home court player all year long. His numbers have dipped significantly on the road, and it just felt like there's just too many games where he's just, he's going to get his 20 minutes or whatever, even if he's playing poorly, but there's just no payoff. And when he's not scoring, I mean, obviously he's not going to be making a big impact defensively. So, I'd say the upside is I didn't notice him being an issue defensively today, and you really noticed him making plays, hitting shots, and being a safety release valve on offense. And I thought, you talk about Pat, I think he's been just feels like he's getting stuck in making more plays. Tonight he had a help block, and then he had a block on Buddy Hield of a 3-point shot, which, vintage Pat Connaughton blocking 3-point shots, right? It feels like it's been a minute since he did that. And, just had a cut off a Dame drive, cut for a layup, had another putback off of a rebound, and hits a corner 3. And that's kind of all you need from Pat, right? Like, I thought his defense was solid, and this is the challenge for this team, right? The starting five has been great all year. This Crowder version of the starting five has been really good too statistically. So it's basically always what happens when you go to these mixed lineups and you split up Dame Giannis. You bring in Bobby. You don't have Brooke and Giannis out there together. What happens? And so you don't have to be a +10 net rating team with these bench groups. Just play it even basically, and then you'll be good. Your starting five has been great statistically, and I want to give Malik Beasley a shout out today as well because you look at Anthony Edwards on Friday, you look at Tyrese Maxey today. Obviously, Bees had to guard both those guys a lot, which we've been saying it all year. It's really not fair to expect Malik Beasley to be the guy that has to try to defend those guys for the start of the first quarter, third quarter, and crunch time. But I thought he deserved credit. Neither of those guys got off. Anthony Edwards hit a bunch of threes late, but just kind of got some shots to fall. But for the most part, I thought especially defensively, Bees and then what Brooke did protecting the rim, I thought on both nights was really impressive. But again, if Bobby and Pat are like the versions that we've seen too often over the past few months, where they're just not the guys that we saw over these last few years, especially in the regular season, in Bobby's case, it's just going to be a lot harder to contend for a championship. You need quality minutes from somebody other than your starting five. And so, yeah, just a positive thing to see those guys come back from the break looking energized. And since January 1st, the Bucks leader in true shooting percentage, Pat Connaughton, he's at 71% true shooting, 54% from the field, 48% from three since the start of the new year. So again, everybody loves kind of picking on Pat Connaughton.
Yes.
And, Ajax should play over him. AJ Green should play over him. And I get it. We've talked about it a fair bit. I think, his usage has fallen off. It's felt like certainly various points, like he just can't get shots off, just like doesn't do enough out there. But certainly the last couple of days are any indication. Again, maybe he's riding a little bit of form. Maybe he needed to recharge his batteries as well. He got engaged. Shout out to Pat for getting engaged.
Absolutely.
So his fiance is also expecting his first child. So it's been a big, I'm not going to say a block of Buddy Hield is the equivalent of getting engaged. But, some good things happening for Pat Connaughton, which is a welcome sight. Because as we said, this is the team.
This is it.
You've pulled all your levers. This is the coach. These are the players. This is who you're going to have to roll with. Knock on wood, everybody stays healthy. But this is the group that you're going to have to try to win a championship with. So get on board, guys. Everybody's just got to start kind of pulling in the same direction. And obviously the last couple of days have been a promising indicator on both fronts.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I give my last thought, I'm glad you brought up Malik Beasley, because the fact that Anthony Edwards had 28 points on 27 shots, like you take that every single time. Every shot was difficult. It was not an easy night for him. Bees was doing his job. Like we saw in that game against the Wolves, he didn't have any offensive himself going until that third quarter when they deliberately started running actions for him. And then tonight against the 76ers, he's out there running and trying to navigate, keeping up with Tyrese Maxey, just trying to keep up. And yet and still, Bees came out 6 of 7 from 3, 7 of 9 from the field. A really, really solid night shooting for him as well. And you love to see that. One last bench thought before we wrap this up. The second quarter, I believe it was, the Bucks ran out a Patrick Beverley, Pat Connaughton, Danilo Gallinari, Bobby Portis, Giannis lineup. I was like, this is really interesting. It didn't necessarily perform that well, but it did make me start thinking about when Chris Middleton is healthy and the ways that you can use him to try to anchor some of these more bench heavy units, because the Bucks need that shot creation, which is why I think that Giannis was the guy who they had anchoring it at that point. But again, with the way the 76ers were playing Giannis with the double teams and everything like that, it wasn't easy for him necessarily to just get his offense going in that second quarter. But I can't wait to see Chris back, because, I mean, again, he's just a great third option for the team. They need his shot creation in the worst way, the playmaking, and also what he can do with the bench units as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing him get back and get healthy, and we can really see what this team looks like. Because like you said, this is it. Got to make it work. So early returns are good coming out of All-Star break. Good vibes, good vibes, good vibes. And we are looking to continue the good vibes here on Locked On Bucks throughout the week as well. As we mentioned throughout the All-Star break, we have been trying to get a former Locked On Bucks host, Kane Pittman, on the show, but the man's big time. We got to go through some loops here before we can get his approval to come on the show. So we're hoping to nail down a date, hopefully sometime this week. But we are looking to get Kane on the podcast soon, have a really good conversation with him and the full crew together. So make sure you all are staying tuned in to Locked On Bucks. The interview is coming soon, as well as all the post-game coverage as the Bucks continue out this week. 2 matchups against the Charlotte Hornets this week here. 2 games. You're like, hey, the Bucks should get these. We want to see them
take care of business.
Please, like, we don't want to have another feeling like we did before the break, where you see them beat the Nuggets and then they lay stinkers against the Heat and the G League Grizzlies. You want to see them, after 2 impressive wins, take care of business against the Charlotte Hornets. So,
who've been playing better. The Hornets have been playing a lot better since the trades.
Grant Williams,
I think, and LaMelo is getting close to coming back. So, yeah, like, now is not the time to get satisfied, especially with a murderer's row of opponents coming up thereafter, including another West Coast trip where I think you're getting the Lakers and the Clippers, I believe, and the Warriors. So, yeah, I mean, a long win streak is going to be really hard to kind of pull off once you get out to the West Coast. But again, take care of business. Beat the Hornets twice. Steady the ship here. We've seen Cleveland lose some games. We've seen the Knicks lose some games. You and Justin talked about best case scenarios. I'm going to still hold out slight hope for number 2 in the conference, but at least stay in that 2-3 slot. Again, some good positive indications, but the schedule is tough. And, but whatever. What is it? Iron sharpens iron. What's the phrase, Camille?
That's it. Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
So hopefully the Bucks get sharp. And again, if they look good, you can get some wins. It's going to strengthen Giannis's MVP case as well. And listen, I need all that energy as well. So hope you all enjoyed today's episode. We will be back with more Locked On Bucks this week. For Frank and myself, we'll catch you later.